Don't buy a TV for the World Cup until you watch this 2026 warning. You've been meaning to do this for months. The World Cup is here, matches running through July 19th, and your current TV isn't cutting it. The picture looks soft. The room is too bright. Everyone who comes over to watch squints at the screen and says nothing because they're being polite. So you drove to Best Buy this week, or you opened Amazon. And the first thing you noticed is that every TV on the shelf and every listing in the search results is marketed specifically for sports. High motion rate, low input lag, vivid color mode. The sale tags practically have soccer balls on them. Here's what they're not telling you. A significant number of those sports-ready TVs being pushed right now are being sold at prices that are 15 to 25% higher than they'll be in August after the tournament ends. Retailers know you're in a hurry. They know you're emotionally anchored to a deadline, and they price accordingly. More importantly, not all TVs are equally good for sports. The specs that matter for watching a World Cup match: motion handling, peak brightness, anti-glare coating, and low-lag processing are not the specs featured most prominently on retail tags. The specs on the tags are the ones that look impressive in a showroom. What you need to watch live sports well is a different list entirely. And getting that wrong means watching blurry, washed-out football on a TV you paid too much for, with everyone on your couch quietly wishing they were somewhere else. Let's go through what actually matters, what doesn't, what's worth buying right now, and how to not get taken by the tournament pricing surge. Motion handling, the most important spec for sports, and the one most buyers get wrong. Sports is the most demanding content category for TV motion handling. A football crossing a field, a player turning at full sprint, a slow motion replay that freezes midair and then jumps to full speed. Every one of those moments stresses motion clarity in ways that a nature documentary or a drama never will. The spec retailers emphasize for motion is refresh rate, most commonly marketed as 120 Hz, 240 Hz, or motion rate 240. Here's the problem. Refresh rate alone does not determine how well a TV handles sports motion. What determines it is the combination of native panel refresh rate, motion processing quality, and the interpolation algorithm the TV uses to create smooth motion between frames. A TV marketed as 240 Hz for sports may have a 60 Hz native panel with motion interpolation software generating the additional frames. The result can look either smooth or artificially fluid, the soap opera effect, depending on how aggressively the interpolation is applied. RTINGs measures native panel refresh rate and motion clarity separately, and the gap between a 60 Hz panel with interpolation and a true 120 Hz native panel is significant for live sports. For sports viewing, a native 120 Hz panel is the minimum worth buying in 2026. The TCL QM7 at $649 for 65 inches offers a native 120 Hz panel with mini LED local dimming. RTINGs rates its motion clarity as strong for the price tier. The Samsung QN85 Neo QLED at $1,099 for 65 inches is the step-up native 120 Hz. Excellent motion processing and a VRR implementation that helps if you're also using it for gaming between matches. The Sony X90L at $849 for 65 inches on clearance has Sony's motion processing reputation, which is among the strongest in the category based on RTINGs's measured motion score. Below 65 inches, the Hisense U8N at 55 inches offers native 120 Hz and strong motion handling for $699. Budget option at 55 inches. The TCL 5 series at $499 with native 120 Hz panel and adequate, not excellent motion processing for the price. One owner who bought a 60 Hz panel thinking it was adequate for sports described it. Bought a Samsung Q60 for $699. Watch the Champions League final on it. Players look like they were leaving ghost trails when they moved quickly across the screen. My old TV from 2017 looked smoother. Went back and researched the Q60 has a 60 Hz panel. Nobody at the store mentioned this. Returned it within 15 days and bought a native 120 Hz model. Bottom line, confirm native panel refresh rate before buying any TV for sports. Not effective refresh rate or motion rate native refresh rate. It should say 120 Hz native. If it doesn't, pass. For World Cup viewing, this is the non-negotiable spec: brightness and anti-glare. What actually matters for a daytime match. World Cup matches this summer are being broadcast across a wide range of times: morning matches, afternoon kickoffs, primetime games. If you're watching in a room with windows, a sliding glass door, or any ambient light during the day, brightness and anti-glare performance matter as much as picture quality in a dark room. RTings measures two separate brightness figures: SDR brightness for standard content and HDR brightness for high dynamic range content. For sports viewing in a bright room, SDR brightness is what matters because most live sports broadcasts are still delivered in SDR, not HDR. A TV that achieves 2000 nits in HDR mode, but only 350 nits in SDR mode, is less useful for a daytime match than a TV that achieves 600 nits in SDR consistently. Mini LED TVs currently dominate the bright room sports category. The Samsung QN85 Neo QLED sustains over 700 nits in SDR mode, according to RTings measurements, enough to remain watchable with afternoon light coming through windows. The Sony Bravia 7 Mini LED hits approximately 650 nits in sustained SDR brightness. The TCL QM8, the brightness champion in the current mid-range, sustains over 800 nits in SDR mode and is specifically the best option for very bright viewing environments. OLED TVs are the opposite recommendation for bright room sports. LG's C5 OLED is an extraordinary TV. In a dark room, the blacks are absolute, the motion handling is excellent, and the colors are reference quality. But OLED panels peak around 200 to 250 nits in sustained SDR brightness, significantly less than mini LED competitors. In a bright living room on a Saturday afternoon, an OLED TV will look noticeably washed out compared to a good mini LED at the same price. Anti-glare coating compounds this. Samsung's Neo QLED and TCL's QM series use matte anti-glare coatings that diffuse reflected light without significantly degrading picture quality. LG's OLED panels use glossy or semi-glossy surfaces that reflect windows and lamps directly. For a dark home theater, the OLED wins. For a living room with 4 windows, the mini LED wins. Bottom line, for daytime or mixed light sports viewing, buy a mini LED TV, Samsung QN85, TCL QM8, or Sony Bravia 7 over any OLED. Save the OLED for your darkroom setup. Prioritize SDR sustained brightness, not HDR peak brightness, for live sports performance. The tournament pricing surge. How to avoid overpaying right now. This is the part that should make you genuinely angry, because it's happening at this exact moment as you're watching this. Major sports events drive predictable retail pricing cycles. TV manufacturers and retailers coordinate promotional pricing ahead of major tournaments to capture the emotional purchase moment, the buyer who has decided they need a new TV and will pay current prices to have it before the next match. Prices rise in the 2 to 4 weeks before and during major events, then fall back to or below pre-event levels when the urgency passes. Display Supply Chain Consultants, the research firm that tracks TV retail pricing, documented price increases of 10 to 20% on mid-range and large format TVs in the weeks surrounding the 2022 FIFA World Cup compared to prices on the same models 8 weeks later. The same pattern appeared around the 2024 Paris Olympics. It is appearing now around the 2026 World Cup. The practical implication? If you can wait until after July 19th when the tournament ends, the TV you're considering today will very likely be 10 to 20% cheaper. A $1,099 Samsung QN85 bought today may be $879 to $949 in August. A $849 Sony X90L clearance unit may drop further as retailers clear inventory to make room for fall lineups. If you buy now, negotiate. The tournament pricing surge is applied at the retailer level, and with significant inventory on hand and pressure to move units, managers at Best Buy and Costco have pricing flexibility they don't always advertise. A direct ask, "What's the best price you can do today on this model?" has resulted in $50 to $150 reductions that weren't advertised, according to multiple buyer accounts on deal forums. One buyer on a deal hunting forum described it, "Walked into Best Buy during the Super Bowl run-up, asked the manager straight out what the best price was on the QN85. He knocked $80 off without hesitating and threw in a soundbar mount. The sticker price is not the final price. Just ask." Bottom line, if you can wait until after July 19th, do. You'll save 10 to 20% on the same model. If you need the TV now, ask for a manager discount before you accept the sticker price. Floor pricing is not fixed, and retailers have room to move during event purchase surges. Which specific TVs are worth buying right now for the World Cup and which ones to skip? Here's the practical guide by budget, optimized specifically for live sports performance. Under $600 for a 5.5-inch TCL QM 755-inch at approximately $549. Native 120 Hz panel, mini LED backlighting, strong SDR brightness for a mid-room TV. RTings rates it as the best sports viewing option under $600 in its size class. Avoid the Hisense A6 and Samsung Q60. At this price tier, both use 60 Hz panels that will produce motion blur on fast sports action. $650 to $900 for a 6.5-inch TCL QM 7 6.5-inch at approximately $649, or the Sony X90L 6.5-inch on clearance at $849 if you can find it. The Sony's motion processing is superior, but both deliver native 120 Hz performance with adequate to strong SDR brightness. The Hisense U8N65-inch at $799 is also in this conversation. Excellent peak brightness. Native 120 Hz, but reliability at that size carries more risk than Sony based on Consumer Reports data. $1,000 to $1,200 for a 6.5-inch Samsung QN 85 Neo QLED at $1,099 is the strongest sports TV in this tier. The combination of 120 Hz native, strong mini LED local dimming, and Samsung's motion processing makes it the go-to recommendation for bright room sports viewing. Sony Bravia 7 at $1,099 is neck and neck for sports performance and pulls ahead slightly in reliability data. For the darkroom sports viewer, if your viewing space has controlled lighting and you primarily watch evening matches, the LG C5 OLED at 65 inches, $1,299, delivers the best overall sports picture quality. The motion handling is OLED excellent. The black levels make stadium shadows look real, and the color volume is superior to any mini LED in its class. The brightness limitation only matters if ambient light is a factor. Bottom line, the short list for World Cup sports viewing is TCL QM7 at the value tier, Sony X90L or Hisense U8N in the mid-range, Samsung QN85 or Sony Bravia 7 at $1,000 to $1,200, and LG C5 OLED if you have a controlled light environment. Stay on that list. Everything outside it is a compromise you'll notice during the first fast break. What to remember before you buy. 4 things. 1. Native 120 Hz panel is the non-negotiable requirement for sports viewing. Confirm it before you buy anything. Motion rate 240 is not the same thing. 2. Mini LED outperforms OLED for daytime and mixed light sports viewing. If your room has windows, buy the Mini LED. The TCL QM7, Samsung QN85, and Sony Bravia 7 are the right choices for that scenario. 3. Tournament pricing is elevated right now by 10 to 20% over what these TVs will cost in August. If you can wait, wait. If you can't wait, negotiate. Which match are you watching this weekend and on what TV? Drop it in the comments. And if this helped you make a better call before the next kickoff, subscribe. More of this is coming.